Guys, we are now in from the government of Brazil. Oh my goodness. Okay, folks, this is so incredibly exciting. And it's such an honor, Marta Machado, that you could join us today on this Friday afternoon panel that is linking topics that I'm sure most of you haven't thought about linking before today. How drug trafficking and environmental crimes kind of interact, and the environmental challenges and consequences of drug trafficking. And for this panel, and you're gonna have to be quiet in the back there, because otherwise I cannot hear. We are changing tacts. We are having one speaker and one commentator. So we're kind of taking down the pace a bit. I'm not going to say 1 minute. And also this leaves you guys lots of room for discussion. So we're kind of pacing it down here. But before I give the floor to Marta Machado, who's the National Secretary for Drug Policy in the Brazilian Ministry of Justice and Police Public Security. And I'm so looking forward to it. I just want to say one little thing about do not mock the importance of democracy and elections. Not very many years ago, Marta was here, and we were all in a terrible state where the academic freedom of people like Marta was almost made impossible due to the Bolsonaro government. And here we are, not an academic who's almost stopped from doing her work, but actually the minister of one of the most important aspects of both climate and criminal politics in one of the most important countries in the world, Brazil, who controls the rainforest, remember? So thank God for elections, and thank God for Marta. The floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you, Lisa and Catalina and Siri. I'm so excited for being here and taking part of the Bergen exchanges, although very sad for not being there personally. But thank you for this opportunity. Well, as Lise mentioned, I had another life before 2023. I used to be a full-time academic, and then in 2023, in Lula administration, I received this invitation to join the Ministry of Justice as National Secretary for Drug Policies in Brazil. And in fact, the subject I prepared to present today is a very dire consequence of the last government, where as we had, I remember we were in Bergen when we were discussing with Daniele, who should be there today too, the consequences of Bolsonaro policy towards the Amazon, which was more than not surveilling the crime. He was stimulating and inciting environmental crime. This situation led to what we see today, when we had an area in the border that was officially not surveilled. This was the perfect opportunity for criminal organizations to take to work in that region, to develop their activities in that region. So are you seeing my presentation? I have a little presentation. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
So let me try to. So I will talk a little bit about the situation, what we found, what we see today in the Amazon basin, discussing a little bit the relation between illicit drug market and environmental impact, and how we see as an alternative today, of course, police and surveillance is back to the region, but we also see that we also need different strategies and finally discuss how we can have sustainable alternative development in the region. So I hope I have time to talk a little bit in that direction today. So traditionally, it's not new. There are some studies and some research connecting drug trafficking and environmental degradation. One drive discusses impacts of cultivation and production and increased energy use, rise of deforestation this is the government things. Rising deforestation in the areas, loss of biodiversity. You have also effects in terms of drug use and the pollution and water and soil pollution. We have this year a very important research in Rio de Janeiro that found cocaine in many sharks living in the west zone of Rio de Janeiro, and that's also a very important sign that there is a impact in the ecosystem by waste. And also drug responses. We have discussing, I'm looking to Catalina here, there is a large discussion in the Colombian case in the use of glyphosate to destroy the crops, and the many impacts, environmental and social impacts also, and health impacts of the use of fumigation programs to eradicate coca plantations. But another chapter of that relation came into light in recent research, and that was comprehensively discussed in the last year World Drug Report, where we had a special produced by UNODC. The last World Drug Report had a special chapter addressing the environmental harm related to drug trafficking in the Amazon basin. And what they show here is the phenomenon of convergent crimes, the convergence of crimes in the region. What we see is the relation between drug trafficking, deforestation, illegal mining, and also timber trafficking and wildlife and trafficking of wildlife species. There are different connections. We won't have time to deepen here, but they are connected in different ways. One way is the sharing of infrastructure. So the Amazon is a region that is very far away. It's very difficult to reach. So illicit activities are sharing routes, illegal airstrips, the infrastructure, so lodging, fuel, etc. We also have a phenomenon of diversification of activities itself. Criminal organizations starting to do different illegal activities, but also the use of illegal mining for money laundering. So what we see here is really the interconnection between illicit activities, what we are calling the convergence of crimes. That's very challenging because institutions are made are separating things. So the convergence of crime is there. It's happening, but traditionally institutions inside the government especially are separated. So we have branches looking to environmental crime, we have branches looking for drug related issues, different branches using to criminal worried with criminal organizations. And we are now having this challenge of connecting those activities and connecting those policies. And we are trying to do that discussion in the National Secretary where I am now. I'm just to show a little bit what to like this main point in the center. It's Manaus, is the capital of the Amazon, the state of Amazonas. We see here a very strong concentration of routes that starts from that region, that starts from the north in the Amazon. It goes from there to Europe, but also from there to the rest of Brazil. Here we see how the rivers are used. So the Amazon rivers are the main route for transporting the drugs, especially the one that afterwards goes to the European market. And here we have a situation that, river transports are used here, but also when the level of the river is low, indigenous individuals are starting to be recruited because they are very good in walking in the forest. So when there is no way to go with the rivers, indigenous people are being recruited to walk through the forest and get to there. Sorry, I received here that I need to put the slide in presentation mode. So 1 second. Okay, now it goes. Sorry for that. So this map, we started to produce data because there is not a lot of data on that yet. We had some insights in the World Drug Report, and now we created a center here that is working to produce evidence on the situation in the Amazon. This graph shows that deforestation goes together with the amount of apprehension of drugs. So there is an alignment. It suggests an alignment between heightened in deforestation and increasing in drug trafficking activities. This one shows. So the red dots shows deforestation. And the orange, light orange and pink areas are indigenous people's lands. So it shows that deforestation is happening around indigenous people's territories. And in fact, it's a protected area where the military police, the state military police cannot enter. So there is also a lot of incidents of criminal organizations pressing and menacing indigenous communities to hide the drug inside their territories. And that is also provoking a lot of violence against indigenous communities and individuals. So this is it's a different state, also in the Amazon region, the state of Pará. Here we really have, while in the last one we have deforestation happening more in the south area, here we have deforestation widespread in the state with a very significant correlation with land stripes. So what we see here, like the black airplanes are registered land stripes. The white ones are illegal and unregistered land stripes. And also we also see here how indigenous territories has been affected, the light orange ones, how they have been affected by these activities. And we have here a very important presence of illegal mining. And there is a clear connection between illegal mining and drug trafficking, especially for money laundering purposes. And a lot of, and also we have here a very serious situation within the population, also because there is the presence of drugs. So there is an increase in consuming of drugs among poor population and indigenous population too. So one thing that we are now developing is harm reduction programs for indigenous populations with a lot of cultural adaptations. But it's something that is a situation, a health situation that also is very important here. And this is a graph that shows that shows homicides. So it's a map of violence. It also shows what we see here in Brazil today is that the Amazon region, the North region, concentrates now, because of the presence of criminal organizations, concentrate the highest homicide rates in the country, even being the less populated region in the country. So that's a situation that we see now, an increase of violence, also because there is a lot of disputes between criminal organizations due to the importance of these routes. So this is the situation, the context we are dealing, the connections of drug trafficking with loss of environmental protection, increase of alcohol and other drugs among indigenous individuals, increase of violence against women too, and the recruitment of indigenous youth for collaborating with the drug trafficking. And also with an increase of incarceration of indigenous individuals. So we are trying to deal with that. So a very, very short on how we see and what we are, how we are trying to address that situation. Of course, first we are producing data because there was very little data produced on that context, even for diagnosis. For example, until now, we receive many denounces of violence against indigenous communities, but it's not systematized. So this is one thing that we are doing. Of course, the police, federal police, and the Secretary of Public Security is working to putting back surveillance in the region. So there are strategic police bases being placed there. But of course, we know that we cannot address that situation only with repressive force. So that's what we are. That's the part that we are working more closely here in my secretary. So thinking about alternative. So how can we increase the resilience of the local communities in face of the violence and the pressure of the organized crime. So we are working with the idea. So we are working in the framework, let's say so, of alternative sustainable development in drug policies. This is a path that has been implemented a lot in Peru. Colombia has a long history of alternative development policies with many lessons that we are now learning, and very interesting that we have been developing a very close relation with the Colombian government, because there are really many lessons on what we can see. And what we can learn. So we are working on promotion of social development. So we are working on supporting bioeconomy projects of indigenous communities and local communities, so they can support the pressure of organized crime, and of course talking about biodevelopment of the region. So the Amazon region has been for decades being a place of extractivism, and development projects towards the regions has always been led by an extractivist drive. So we are like taking part with the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Indigenous People, the ones that Ministry of Regional Development, the ones that are thinking about a different way of development, a bio-development, an eco-development for the region, we are making an incidence that the resources should be directed to the areas where the criminal activities are happening. So our role here as a national secretary is, of course, we are not able to lead the development policies in the country, but we are trying to direct. We are producing an index of vulnerability of communities towards organized crime, so that different resources of different ministries can be directed to that community, for example, and increase their resilience. We are seeing that also as a strategy, so it's as a public security strategy. So that's also a dispute, of course, because when we have high rates of violence, high rates of homicides, the immediate drive is let's increase repression. But we know that we have been seeing that path failing in our urban centers, and repression have been driving violence, have been driving institutional and non-institutional violence against poor and peripheral populations in Brazil, in urban peripheries. And we don't want that mistake to happen again in the Amazon in this scenario. So that's why we are pushing that discussion on drug policies based on development, and especially on human development. And also we launched a strategy. We launched a national strategy for mitigating and repairing the impacts of drug trafficking in indigenous land, which means of course looking at it from a public security from the public security point of view, but also the increase of rights and the increase of social services, and the enhancing of and supporting local economies, bioeconomies, so that they can be resilient to those menaces, and partnering many different organizations to develop bioeconomy sustainable projects in the region, and also trying to break the silos between the environmental discussion on the environmental protection and the discussion on criminal organizations and drug trafficking. I think there is a very important field to be developed here, to think in public security, to think on addressing the situation in the Amazon, not only through police, but also with social and human development. And I think that was what I prepared. This is the center we just launched last year, the Center of Studies on Drugs and Social and Communitarian Development. It's a partnership between the Brazilian government, the UNODC, and the UNPD, and we are developing those maps and those diagnoses, those studies to understand the situation in the Amazon, and also financing some pilot projects in the region. So thank you so much. I was not so organized.
This was fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you. So incredibly interesting. So interested, because I know there's going to be a lot of comments, but I have one amazing speaker sitting next to me. I wish you were both sitting next to me. Catalina.
Thank you, Lise. Hi, Marta. So good to see you, and also very happy to see you not only as an academic, but now also in your capacity as a member of the Brazilian government. Very, very happy to see you, Marta. Just to add a few ideas about you have shared. So of course we are in front of different problems, like global problems, global issues related to climate change, biodiversity loss, but also public health due to the consumption of drugs. Which are global issues, and then all of those, of course, connect to local problems and local issues. So similar to Brazil, Ecuador, other Amazonian countries, Colombia, of course, the spaces where the basics for the production of drugs are produced, like coca leaf in the case of Colombia, these spaces often overlap, and also now we can talk about minerals later as well. These spaces often overlap with protected environmental areas, areas that are under some sort of scheme for environmental protection, and also areas where indigenous and Black communities live, and often they own collectively land and spaces where the states are not very much present with public services. The states are very much absent, and you have indigenous and Black communities, but you also have, of course, space for the organized crime to operate in those areas. So you have spaces that are very contentious. You have spaces that are highly political, and often spaces with a lot of natural resources and minerals to be extracted. So many interests around these lands. So I would like to focus on two examples from Colombia, two situations, problems, but also court cases that relate to these global and local problems. One connects to the Amazon and the other one to the Atrato River. So first, the Amazon was the focus of litigation back in 2017, and it was framed as a climate change litigation. And the idea was to push the Colombian government to limit or to stop deforestation in the Amazon. And the claims of the case were mostly to include obligations for government at all levels, municipal, environmental, and national levels, to include the protection of forests in national development plans and development plans and governmental plans. It was a beautiful ruling. It was about youth, the rights of future generations, and the Supreme Court also used this now very used idea of rights of nature to say, this is true, this is right, we're going to protect the Amazon, but also the Amazon is a subject of rights in itself, is a living entity, and it should be protected as a holder of rights. Interestingly, and it has been highly criticized, indigenous communities were not part of the ruling, were not part of the legal case. So the case was basically framed as a climate litigation. What has happened after this year? So there was a ruling in 2018. Everyone was very happy about it, except from the indigenous communities who were not really notified about it. What has happened is very slowly some sentences and words have been included in these development plans and government plans, but deforestation continues to increase. It hasn't been stopped, continues rampant. And what we see is the government, when the national government is asked about this ruling, this case, what is the government doing? The response is a focus on the use of criminal law and the use of state armed forces and the military, to jail people, individuals, mostly small producers, farmers, peasants, who are actually already socially marginalized, socially excluded. So it's as you say in Brazil, it's a failed strategy. We all know it's a failed strategy, and deforestation continues to increase. And we don't know yet what it means for a state to manage or to govern a territory that is a subject of rights. We don't know this. We know that it is a territory that has a lot of natural resources and it has been managed that way. But what does it mean to govern a territory or be part of the government, multi-sectoral government of a territory that is a subject of a right to conservation, to protection? What does it mean? So far, it's still empty words in a ruling. It hasn't been filled out. The other case, a bit different but a bit similar, is the Atrato River case. So the Atrato River case was an amazing tutela case brought by social movements in the Pacific region of Colombia, the people in the Atrato Basin. They built the case, they argued the case, and they brought it to court, and it is about illegal mining, among other problems, like deforestation as well, licensing by the state. But this one was mostly about illegal mining in the Atrato River, which for gold extraction of gold. So the river is highly polluted by mercury, and mercury is bioaccumulated in fish, and people eat the fish. So it's a huge public health problem in the whole basin, and a food security problem, because people there are very poor, very marginalized, and what they have to eat, there's an abundance of fruits, vegetables, and fish, but they eat fish almost 3 times a day. And if you eat fish with mercury 3 times a day, you have a health problem. It's impossible to buy meat and just decide to have a different diet. So the Atrato River, so there are different orders for the state to take measures to improve the situation in the river. But again, like in the Amazon, the focus has been on the use of the state armed forces to try to take and burn like machinery that is used to extract the minerals from the river. So when you go there and interview people, everyone says it continues to be the same, the river is still polluted, and the organized crime are still profiting highly from the extraction of gold, and gold continues to flow into global capital and continues to travel for beautiful rings and things. And it's not really working. So again, these strategies, repression, Marta, like you said, repressive strategies, basically what they do is they ignore or they cannot see the complexities around the production of an extraction, around extractive activities, because of course, people who live in these areas often have to somehow be part of these economies, because they also need to live from this. So they are the ones who end up in jail. every now and then, someone from, a big name from the military or the police or the state goes to jail, but it's considered like a bad apple, and not systemic, not a systemic problem. So as a result, the problem in the Atrato Basin persists, contamination persists, state absence continues, and of course, poverty, marginalization. I think what both cases have highlighted is social mobilization, which I think is a very positive aspect that we need to highlight. And to close, or to finish these reflections, I think today, in addition to the issue of illicit drug production, we face problems related to the extraction of minerals, such as gold, and also minerals are essential for the energy transition. So this is also what we're starting to see: the extraction of cobalt, nickel, copper, in Chile, in Colombia, in different countries. And seems like because of that changing dynamics of drugs consumption in the world, seems like cocaine is not as good as it used to be, as profitable. So people are consuming more fentanyl and other things, and seems like people in Colombia, usually farmers who are part of producing coca leaf, to sell it to the organized crime, many times forced to, or because of poverty forced to. Now they need to start engaging in other types of extraction. But the thing is, the extractive logic continues, and the problems of environmental harm and social harm continue as well.
We've heard two fantastic presentations of incredibly complex dynamics. I know this is, and we're turning towards the end of the day. I'm really worried about going over time, but I think we have time for maybe a couple of comments, and then potentially maybe a short response from Marta. So I'll take 2 or 3 questions. Two. Seriously. 2. There will be questions and nothing more. That's fine. I abide by the rule of theory because it makes sense. So we'll take some comments, and then when the time's up. Do you have the one who hasn't start speaking? Go.
Yes, thank you, Marta and Catalina. This was fantastic. Question 1. Given that Colombia and Brazil share border, I wonder whether this situation has some transnational dynamics going on there in both the criminality, but also the agency coordination. And then the second question is, on the future generations case, that Catalina, I'm very happy that you brought up the connection between the global and the local. What was the role that the organization play, in the sense that that is a very huge organization in the Colombian capital, but sometimes whether you consider that that was a product of a disconnection with the territories that are certainly not that are at the periphery. Yes, thank you.
Just throw it to next one in line. I'll take 3 comments. Okay.
Have a conversation with Marta.
You can have a conversation with Martha. You're lucky you. Rachel, you're not so. No, okay.
So Martinha, it's me here. So we are going to have in a few moments just climate transformation. So it would be interesting if you could give us examples of these bio development projects that you are implementing in the Amazon. That would be super interesting. Thanks.
I'll be really quick. The solutions seem very clear that you need to break down the silos, and it'd be really interesting to hear more about the politics of the incentives, about why those silos are so difficult to break down, and the politics of where there might be opportunities for change.
Thank you, Pilar. Then Rachel, you have the last comment, and then I think we have to end the session just like that.
Yeah, just thinking through Mexico for a lot of what you're saying, Marta and Catalina, but I want to push back a little bit about the absence of the state and the need for more state, because as we know, the state is deeply implicated in these networks. So Marta is the good state, but what happens when the state's not so good? So I want to ask a question about how you're thinking about that. And also in terms of this index of vulnerability of indigenous communities to organized crime, how does that work in terms of consultation, and what does that do in terms of increasing visibilities and, you know, the double-edged sword that is? Yeah.
Thank you, Marta, because you're not in the room with us. I'm going to I'll give Marta 2 minutes, and the rest of you can get the conversation in the break with Catalina. So 2 minutes to Marta before we end the session. Thank you so much.
So very fast, many very interesting points that I would love to comment. I will just mention some of them because of the time. So I would mention like this. I wanted to comment that the situation Catalina described about illegal mining and the pollution of mercury is exactly what we see in Brazil right now. So many emergency, an emergence of health among indigenous populations because of the poisoning by mercury, and exactly the same. But also exactly the same movement. When we started to destroy the machinery, we discovered that there were whole communities starving and just waiting until the next machinery comes. So I think that's exactly the point. So the repressive approaches are very limited. So in this specific case, for example, we are working, partnering with UNODC with a project that's called Tapajós. So it's working in the Rio Tapajós, where we have one of the most serious places of illegal mining, combined with drug trafficking, with a very poor community. So there are studies inclusive. There are some of the data shows a very thin line between slave work by these communities in the criminal organizations. And we are working there, for example, we are supporting a cooperativa, how we mentioned that, like associative entrepreneurs, a communitarian economy on producing castanhas do Pará, which is a very important product of the region. So this is one thing. We are also talking with an institute that's called Amazonia 4.0, where they bring they bring light and green technology to those rivers to work on production of chocolate made not from cacao but for local nuts. So they are working on different chain values and production. So they're installing points of production of local products and with technical assistance and etc. So the idea is that they take technology to there. So they break the extractivist logic that they just the forest, that we just take raw material from the forest. So the product, the final product is produced there in a very sustainable way. So this is just to mention some of the example. The transnational dimension is very important. We are working a lot. We are doing all that work, partnering with OTCA, the Organização do Tratado de Cooperação Amazônica, the treaty that we have, that put together the countries that share the Amazon. So we are in a very strong dialogue with that organism, which is interesting because just it's the first time that public security is an issue for OTCA. And so we are partnering with them and working that in a horizontal way with other countries, and of course learning a lot from Colombia. We just did 2 weeks ago a meeting in the triple border, Brazil, Peru, and Colombia, which is a hotspot area for drug trafficking. But the whole discussion was on what we need to learn from Colombia and for other partners about about development-oriented projects. And I would say that one thing that is a lesson learned from the experience of Colombia is to hear the indigenous communities. So responding to Rachel, this is something that is very important for us. I think one lesson is that we cannot bring any solution without hearing the communities. So we are partnering FUNAI, Fundação Nacional dos Povos Indígenas, the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples, and we are through them, and also through the structure of we have here in Brazil a different system of health from the indigenous communities, distritos. There's a different organization. So we have health districts. So we are also doing hearings through those structures. So we are very worried with that, and I think that's one of the lessons that we can learn from the first projects of Colombia. And we are also
okay. Sorry, Marta. Okay. You're finished.
No. Last thing is that we are bringing the discussions to the forum that discuss climate justice and biodiversity. We are partnering Colombia in the next COP16 in Cali, and we'll do the same in the COP30. So I think that's the dialogue we want to bring, and this is also a movement of breaking the silos, because these instances are not discussing the situation of organized crime, and there is a true fear to securitize the environmental agenda, but we cannot not see what's happening.
Marta, this is a fantastic, I don't want this to end, but it is also a fantastic ending, segueing to the next panel. So thank you so much for taking the time. And thank you, Catalina, for a fantastic discussion. So this was so exciting and so enriching. Thank you both. And come back to Bergen.
Yes, I miss you all.
Thank you so much. So guys, there's still a little bit of time to stretch your legs and get your coffees, and that's wonderful. And thanks for a fantastic panel. Thank you so much.
Siri, I miss you all.
We miss you.
Thank you, Catalina. We have much to talk.
You have to promise to come back at some point.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you.
It was super interesting.
Yeah, it was a little bit disorganized, but yeah.
It's heartbreaking and super interesting.
Thank you,
There are
Marta.
more of your friends.
Ana! I can't believe you are all there. I can't believe. Yes, I fear of missing out in the most high, level.
Ciao.
Ciao. I love you.